we do work with immigrant people, or perhaps with migrant people. So I just wanted to say, I think that was all I had to say. I knew there was one more thing, but at any rate, but I was looking over our speakers, our list of speakers this week, and realized that everyone in that, and all of our presenters speak at least one language other than English, or fluent in at least one language other than English, which to me says that they have real world experience, that they have real, boots on the ground kind of experience. And I think that they will have a lot to say, and I am very interested in hearing what they have to say. And so that kind of a boots on and the experience kind of leads to my presentation or introduction of Father Mike, who himself speaks at least one language other than English. Yeah, he used to. He says he used to actually speak the Gaelic, correct? He studied Gaelic, yeah. And that he, let's see, and also he said when he came to North Florida in 1970, when you were, how old, 25, 27 years old? In 1970, the language they spoke here was certainly another language to him, and the culture was, a total culture shock to him. But he came from a very small town near Doolin, Ireland, in County Clare. Doolin itself is, they have like a picture on the internet, like one picture encompasses all of Doolin. So he's from a small town near Doolin. So it's a pretty sparse area, but it's a beautiful area. But it's not at all like what we've got here. That we're grateful for Father Mike, that he took the steps necessary to be here, to come to the United States, to come to Florida, to come to Good Shepherd, and especially to be here with us today. So Father Mike will give us a few words.
I'd like to say welcome as well to Good Shepherd. It is our joy and privilege to have you for this symposium. Now I know why I was being quizzed last night as to where I was from. You never know the purpose of somebody asking you something about yourself, that it will be used later. And thank you, Suzanne. I'd like to say thank you to Suzanne and our Mercy and Justice Core Committee for all your work, for all your awareness of these issues, and helping to keep us in tune with what's going on. I guess I too am a migrant, having come here to apply for a green card, and having my experiences coming to New York, coming back from Ireland. Your two lines: U.S. citizens. This was for passport control. U.S. citizens, all others. For several years I was in the all others until I decided it was time to join the family here. But our topic today is, it's been a topic that has been an issue down through the generations, I guess from the very beginning. It's certainly a very sensitive issue for our time, for our country. I guess not just for us, but maybe for the whole world as well. There are always people looking for a better place. In fact, we all are, our country is descendants of immigrants who came looking for a better land, a better place. And they have been blessings, that is what has made our country. So I think it's very important for us to, we don't have maybe, we are guided in our discussions by our faith traditions, helping us to see the path ahead. And I think it's very important for our communities, for us as a church, to keep to be informed about what's going on, what should be going on, and maybe what we can do. Sometimes when we look at the national, international situation, we say, well, what can I do? And the point is, we all can do something. We all have an awareness. We all have a voice. You know, conversations, daily conversations with others, with fellow parishioners. We can always help them to appreciate the extent of the challenge and maybe what our faith inspires us to do. So again, thanks to all of you who have come to help to participate in this day and very timely and necessary reflection on our need to be welcoming. So let us pray. Oh God, no one is a stranger to you, and no one is ever far from your loving care. In your kindness, watch over migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers, those separated from their loved ones, those who are lost, and those who have been exiled from their homes. Bring them safely to the place where they long to be, and help us always to show your kindness to strangers and those in need. We ask this through our Savior, who too was a refugee and a migrant, who traveled to another land, searching for a home. We offer you all our prayers. We give you honor, glory, and praise today, always, and forever. Amen.
Amen. Our first speaker is Elizabeth Ricci, who is, in addition to what you can read about, I'll try to give you a few other facts about her. You can read about her in your program. We have a little bio in there. She was born in Brooklyn, New York, which gives her street cred right there. And she and her husband, Neil Rambana, had a nationwide law firm specifying in complex immigration law. She is a recognized expert in immigration law, the mother of two daughters, what did you say, 10 and 13, for which she gets additional street cred and blessings for that. She's a passionate advocate for immigration reform and victims of human trafficking. And the most amazing thing about her is that she's here today to speak to us. So we thank you very much, Elizabeth, for being here.
A couple of other things that are not in the program that I wanted to mention. So I'm Catholic educated from second grade through college. I went to Barry University in Miami. I received the Eastman Dominican Scholarship while I was there. I studied international business. When I was in college, I worked at the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City as an exchange student with Barry. I was a small business development volunteer in Guatemala. Worked closely with the Catholic nuns there. And I taught immigration and other subjects at Barry. I've been practicing immigration almost exclusively for about 19 years. I was recently appointed by the president to serve on the Selective Service Board. So on top of that, I do have two kids. It's Red Hills. I've got 3 birthday parties and a practice. So I need to leave at 11 o'clock when my Uber driver duties kick in. So I've set my alarm for a half an hour from now. So if anyone has any questions, they can ask them, and we'll still be on time. So a few years ago, I gave a speech very similar to what I'm going to give this morning, and an acquaintance of mine came up to me afterwards and she said, "You almost convinced me." So I'm not here to convince anyone of anything, but I hope that you'll think critically about some of the things I'm going to tell you and reflect on them. So I was asked to talk about the basics of immigration, intent of the law and implementation, my experience helping people in our community, discuss how the local faith-based community can help, and talk about consequences, which I will mix in with my comments. So first, the basics of immigration, the intent of the law and implementation. So according to a recent study, immigration was found to be more complicated than tax law. It's a dynamic area of law. It changes with administration and with industry needs. In the most basic terms, we have an immigration system that allows family members to sponsor each other and employers to bring in foreign talent, either temporarily or permanently, so long as American jobs are protected. That is part of how our employment-based immigration works. We have a limited asylum program and a very generous refugee program, but due to geography and policy, our refugee program is not used nearly as much as our asylum program. Because the term asylum has been in the news so much lately, I'd like to go over exactly what it means and what the legal standard for asylum is. So an asylee requests asylum from within the U.S. They're already here. And the basis is past persecution or well-founded fear of being persecuted in the future on the account of race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. A refugee, on the other hand, requests their status from abroad. And by the way, it does take about 2 years for a refugee to go through that process abroad. So about a year ago, the then Attorney General announced a zero-tolerance policy regarding those seeking asylum at the border. And as you've seen in the news, asylum seekers are being detained, and at taxpayer expense, by the way, or sent to Mexico during their processing. There's a new policy that says asylum seekers must now seek asylum at established ports of entry. So the consequence of that is that by limiting applicants' ability to request asylum, we are violating international law, but we're also criminalizing applicants who have a right to request asylum, and we're furthering their suffering. Family unity has always been a bedrock of American immigration. This is changing with attempts to cut family-based immigration and focus on what's called merit-based immigration. So merit-based is not the term that's currently in place. What we do have right now as far as merit is something called extraordinary or exceptional ability. I'll talk more about that. But when we say merit-based, that's a proposal to go into effect perhaps in the future. And there's actually a test that you can take to see if you qualify to come to the United States. And I took it this week and I failed the test, just so you know. So you have to be a certain age, have certain education, have certain English proficiency, job offer, and things like that. So I would not have come here. By the way, most of my family came here, quote, illegally from Italy as steerage in the early 1900s into New York. Let's talk a little vocabulary. So immigration actually does define some words. There is a glossary on their webpage. They don't define the word immigrant, but they do define the word refugee. And if you want to go on their webpage, it's uscis.gov. uscis.gov. They're the agency that regulates immigration. And in about the last year, they added the word legal immigration to the website. It used to be called INS before 9/11, and then there was a split, and now USCIS is the agency that works with visa applications and family-based petitions and things like that. And now we have new agencies like ICE that you saw in the video. In the legal sense, an immigrant is generally known as someone who has evidenced an intention to stay in the U.S. They have to apply for something affirmatively. They're asking for a permanent status. It's not that, in a legal sense, an immigrant is just someone who's from somewhere else. I mean, you can go to Disney and you see a lot of people from other places who are just visiting. Those are not immigrants in the legal sense. A green card is the term. It's a slang expression for lawful permanent residency. And the card today is actually a pinkish blue and green, a blue and white, kind of red, white, blue color. It's not even green anymore. But the term green card lives on. I don't use the term illegal, right? It was also mentioned by the priest in the video. People are not illegal. People might not have documents, but that doesn't make the person themselves illegal. Something else I saw in the video that I wanted to mention, somebody had a sign about amnesty. So amnesty is a blanket forgiveness. Basically, it does not take into consideration crimes, or a person's background doesn't require fees or fines. So no one right now in Congress is talking about an amnesty. The last amnesty took place under Ronald Reagan. So if you hear about 245I of the Life Act, that was a section of the law that sunset in 2001, that was not an amnesty. because it required fines of $1,000. You could not have a serious criminal history, and you had to have been here for a certain amount of time. So 245I was not an amnesty, whereas what we saw in the late 80s, that was an amnesty. Something else I noticed in the movie, there was a guy with a sign and it said, "Open border politicians remember 9/11." Did anybody see that guy in the movie? Okay. Most of the people who came and committed acts of terror in 9/11 came on visas legally. They did not cross the border from Mexico. And they came on student visas, many of whom came on visas for schools that did not even exist. In other words, that was a problem at the U.S. consulate level where we did not check on the visas. We did not check that those were legitimate requests. So to point the finger at the border, and I'll get into that a little bit more, is disingenuous. To say that that was an open border problem, that had nothing to do with the open border, well, not that we have one, but those people came on airplanes on visas. I also want to point out that being in the U.S. without documentation is not a crime. I want to say that again. Being in the U.S. without documentation is not a criminal offense. What is a criminal offense is if you've been ordered deported, you leave, and then you re-enter without complying with the terms of your deportation. But being here without documentation is not a crime. If it were, what would that mean in the court context? Any lawyers in the audience? So don't you have the right to an attorney in the criminal context? So under the Fourth Amendment, we would have to pay a taxpayer expense for attorneys to represent people in removal if we are indeed going to truly criminalize people who are here undocumented. So that's a catch-22. Do we really want to do that? We're treating them like criminals, but not in the sense that they're getting the legal assistance that they would be entitled to if they truly were criminal. That would add additional time to the tremendous backlog that we already have. A court case right now, by the way, our immigration court, anybody know where it is? No, some of you did. It's in Orlando. Yeah, so we're, if you are in this part of the state, the immigration court for you is in Orlando, and immigration, the agency, USCIS, is Jacksonville. So generally you have to schlep a long way if you have a court hearing or a USCIS appointment. So that's what my husband, my law partner, does, and we're getting cases right now 2 and 3 years out. That's not justice. If we're saying we want to clean up the court system by having a case take 2 or 3 years, just waiting doesn't make a lot of sense. I'll get into that a little bit more in a moment. Let's talk about some numbers and some other terms. Anyone heard the term anchor baby? What does that mean? What do you think what does that mean to you, Suzanne? So it's a derogatory term, anchor baby, that somebody's going to come here and have a baby here and hopefully derive citizenship from that baby at some point. Who wants to guess how long it would take for an anchor baby to get their mom or dad U.S. citizenship? 18, how many? A lifetime, and you said 30? Pretty close, so 36 years. So let me tell you what that means. So mom has baby here illegally. Baby's a U.S. citizen because the Constitution says so, born here. That baby needs to be 21, but because mom or dad entered undocumented or was undocumented, well, in that case, he or she would have had to have entered undocumented, they need to leave for 10 years. Adult child gets them a green card, and they have to wait 5 more years. So that's where we get the 36 years. That's the minimum. So we heard before the election that the 14th Amendment was a mistake. Anybody hear those news stories? It was actually not really what it says. But then once the election happened, we didn't hear that conversation anymore. And that may be because studies show that by limiting birthright citizenship does not have an effect on alleviating illegal immigration. There might be some other reasons. Who makes up our immigrant population? So 40% are immediate relatives. That is spouses, parents of citizens, and minor children of U.S. citizens. Then we have 25% family-based. That's more like brother sponsoring a sister. Have to be a U.S. citizen to do that. 15% employment-based. That's mostly what I do. 15% refugee or asylee, and 5% diversity. I want to revisit quickly that asylum statistic I gave you, and we talked about how to get asylum. A lot of people are anti-asylum. They don't really know what that means, and they claim that asylees are criminals and terrorists. There's been one incident, at least that I know of, where an asylee committed an act of terror. So to try to eliminate the asylum program entirely because of one person is really a knee-jerk reaction. And that one person, of course, is one of the Sarnaya brothers. Both of them received asylum after having entered legally into the United States. One was a citizen, and one did not get his citizenship because he had a criminal history. The other 5% is the diversity lottery. You can win a green card. We do have a program for that. I really have very little to do with that. You can do it online. I know it used to be 5,000. I don't know if it's more than that, but it's a drop. That's not much. Not all countries are eligible. You have to have a high school degree, and it's not real practical. We used to joke before it was online that the winner of the lottery was the post office. Because so many thousands and thousands of people would buy stamps to enter into it. They would. Maybe we need to bring it back. What's the problem? So the system is broken. I think any reasonable person can agree. What's contributing to the problem? Crime, poverty, poor infrastructures, corruption in other countries. Why are those other countries suffering those circumstances? In my opinion, it's the drug trade. Who's fueling the drug trade? The United States of America is. If we minimized drug use in this country, there wouldn't be such a drug trade, and the drug lords would not have such power in those other countries, and we would see a lot of this change. But you'll remember that part of the definition of asylum did not include crime and poverty, right? The definition was that someone suffered past persecution or has a well-founded fear of future persecution on the account of race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group or political opinion. So if you're fleeing your town because of violence, that does not make an asylum case. But that is not for us to predetermine at the border. International law allows for you to make that request at the border, not at a particular point, anywhere at the border. So let's think in a business sense. So a $1 billion investment by the United States in Central America would almost entirely alleviate the crime, poverty, and corruption that is causing people to leave. $1 billion. A wall costs $20 billion just to start, not maintain, and does not alleviate any of the humanitarian conditions that we just talked about earlier. We saw in the movie. So for example, like I said in my intro, I was in the Peace Corps. So if you don't have schools, and you don't teach people how to earn a living, you don't teach them skills, and they already have a corrupt government, it's only going to be perpetuated. Women will be abused, children will be abused, people don't have jobs, and they're going to want to get out of there. It's just surviving. So if we can build schools, if we can, and I'm not proposing that we do that, I'm just showing you the math. $1 billion there alleviates the problem, $20 billion here doesn't. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So something has to give, right? All right. If we're on the fix on this side, let's ignore the $1 billion versus $20 billion expenditure. This is the leaky faucet versus the ripped pool liner analogy. So the leaky faucet, maybe a few cents or a few dollars a month, is slowly causing damage to the sink. You're not really noticing anything on your bill. And then we have the pool liner that's leaking, causing hundreds or thousands of dollars a month in water and damaging your property. What are you going to fix first? To fix the pool liner, right? Now, I'm not saying that they shouldn't both be fixed, but if we could only fix one, we should probably pick the pool liner. So the wall is the analogy there. Why are we spending $20 billion on a wall when that's not really the problem? The 9/11 hijackers didn't come in through the border with Mexico. I'll give you some more statistics in a moment. So why is the system broken? We are not educating enough people in this country in the STEM areas. This is a fact. We are not graduating enough people to meet our needs. So what do we have to do? Import those people. But we're not importing those people. So now we're not competitive because we have American companies that don't have enough people to work for them and do the work that they need to stay competitive. So you've probably heard, I was talking to Pam in the back earlier, she said, oh, you're really busy. This is a busy time for me, aside from birthday parties and stuff like that. So it's H-1B season. The H-1B visa is the specialized worker visa. It requires a degree or equivalent, and the window of opportunity opens on April 1st. The reason for that is that the government's fiscal year starts October 1. You cannot file more than 6 months before your start date, which brings us to April 1st. There's 65,000 available. How many applied last year? Any guesses? About 300,000. There's not enough visas. So we're not educating the people in these areas that we need them, especially computer technology. And we don't have enough visas available. Something's got to give. So you might have read the article in the Democrat about a year ago about the Indian physician couple, and she's a physician on an H-1B visa. And they're not my clients, so I didn't talk about this. I read it in the paper too. And he's a physician, and he has what's called an H-4 employment authorization document. So because Indians are in a special category that take a lot longer than most other countries, the husband was tied to his wife's visa and only had the work authorization under this H-4. Well, not this past January, last year, January, the president said, we're revoking the employment authorization document for H-4s. So all these highly educated people are saying, now what are we going to do? Because we usually are a double income family, usually both very educated. And then March of last year, we're going to revoke it. Still haven't revoked it. We have these highly educated people saying, what are we going to do? Where are we going to go if we're not both able to work? So the consequence is a shortage of highly skilled workers, and guess what? They're going to Canada, Germany, and Australia, and they're making those countries greater. I had a Chinese physician in my office recently. China's also on the slow line. So China and India are the ones primarily for what's called employment-based first and second that are in the slow line. She has a green card pending, basically, but it's not her turn because of this line that you hear about. She's ready to go to Canada. Done. Too much waiting. Families here. This is not worth it for her when she can be contributing and living a decent life in Canada. So the line. This line that I'm talking about is dictated by Congress on something called the Visa Bulletin. The bane of my existence. I have to explain this bulletin to somebody every day, and it doesn't connect because it doesn't make any sense. So the line is too long. So a permanent resident or green card holder who wants to sponsor his or her wife has to wait 2 years, and that spouse needs to maintain status or go home during those 2 years. That's not in the spirit of family unity. That doesn't make a lot of sense. How about that U.S. citizen who wants to file for their Filipino brother or sister? How long is that taking? Almost 23 years. Can't leave the U.S., can't work, can't drive while you're waiting. In the family context, the Philippines is the slowest category. Okay. On the other hand, a Chinese or Indian of extraordinary ability, which means Nobel Prize winning, or 3 lesser awards that shows sustained international claim, must wait 2 years. If we're proposing a merit-based system, we already have one, let's just move that line up. I don't think anyone's going to say, we have too many talented people here. Right? That's not a really reasonable argument. Something else I see, we don't have a humanitarian or a compassionate approach anymore. You might have seen me, I was on Univision about 2 weeks ago. One of the priests who's in the U.S., I think he was Mexican, he probably originally came on the R1 visa, that's the religious worker visa. So my client came from Peru on a religious worker visa, and then he changed churches. And the new church did not file the change of status to the new church on time. In the meantime, his wife has a baby born here, so she's a U.S. citizen with a heart condition and Down syndrome. So I filed for a humanitarian request for the pastor, and I got it approved. This is a couple years ago. I filed for a renewal in September of 2018. In the meantime, the child's condition has not improved. Same evidence plus additional evidence of the baby's doctor visits and things like that, and the hardship it's causing on the family. Get a denial with no explanation. It's not like the kid improved. There's no reason, if we already acknowledged that this was a humanitarian case, 2 years later in a renewal and we're in the same position, to deny it without explanation. Here's another problem. If you enter the country undocumented, generally speaking, you cannot change or adjust your status in the U.S. If you've been here for more than 6 months undocumented, you have to leave the U.S. for 3 years. If you've been here for more than 1 year undocumented, you have to leave for 10 years. That is an incredible disincentive to attempting to legalize, and it's disproportionate to the crime. It's not a crime, as I said earlier, but so perhaps a fine. We saw under 245I of the Life Act of $1,000. That would make the point that this is not something that we're going to encourage. But guess what? People aren't leaving if they know they can't come back for 10 years or 3 years. You know they are.
Is that a law or
Yeah, that's a bar that's part of the code, absolutely. There are certain waivers that apply. Is that 5 minutes to my questions? Total. Okay. Then I'll speed up. Another problem I see is that the U visa is for victims of crime. We're not seeing, first of all, we've taken some most common crimes off the list, assault. So why are immigrants assaulted? Because they don't have social security numbers, so they have a lot of cash on them, right? Had a guy in South Georgia recently stabbed in the groin during a mugging. Couldn't get the U visa certified, and I thought it was a language issue, so I drove up, talked to the sheriff myself. He told me to my face that he thought it was a self-inflicted wound so he didn't get a U visa. The consequence, communities are not safe for it. People aren't willing to report crime to law enforcement. Okay. I don't know how it took so long. Let's see what I can do. True or false? A person in deportation can work and drive legally in Florida. True. Who would like to guess from what country most overstays in the United States are every year? Canada, correct, 93,000. Who said, we know that the father of lies, the devil, prefers a community divided and bickering. This is the criteria to divide the people, the builders of bridges and the builders of walls. Those builders of walls sow fear and look to divide people. What do you want to be? The book. That's right. Okay, so what's been my experience? I love what I do, generally speaking. I do widows and veterans generally for free. You may be asking why a veteran needs help. A lot of veterans were in the military because they enlisted and no one ever checked. They had no documentation whatsoever. So you can skip the line and get citizenship if you serve during a designated period of hostility. I actually have a lot of Vietnam vets that I help. I'll do a U visa when I can get the certification from law enforcement. I generally do those at no charge. Just had a guy the other day, Palestinian, no criminal history, but 3 speeding tickets, denied citizenship. I've got a couple of tickets. Right? Okay, I have about 2 minutes for questions, so I'll skip what I was going to close with. Close? Okay. So, like I said, as a Peace Corps volunteer, I work to improve conditions in other countries. What can you do? You can go on missions as well. You can donate to organizations that help educate women and girls in other countries. You can donate food, money, clothing, teach literacy here at home. You can support drug treatment centers and addicts in recovery, because remember, a lot of this is due to the drug trade. But whatever you do, I urge you to think critically. Think about what charities you support, how you invest your time and your money, where you travel, and for whom you vote. So if you're a Nobel caliber, or you have 3 lesser, I have a lot of those. Or you are what's called exceptional. You can sponsor yourself for a green card. You skip the sponsorship requirement, but the weight still applies. India and China are 1 and 2 years. Everyone else currently is current, but it changes every month, which adds to confusion. If you don't know where you're going to fall, it can go forward or backward. So next month it might not have moved a month. It could go back 3 years. Well, how is that possible if they said they were caught up until that date? So it's very hard for people who are educated to be willing to be in limbo. There is no fence in some places because it's so, the terrain is so rough. So a wall would not go the entire way, by the way. And guess what? We have drones now. A wall will go right open. And people currently pay $5,000 to $10,000 to a coyote to come over them. They get raped and mugged in the meantime. I'd much rather pay a drone operator. Go right open. And guess what? There's tunnels underneath. We have the technology for monitoring. There was some of that in the video, where you can see where we can monitor it much better. But a $20 billion investment, when $1 billion would fix the problem, is not good business. And I've got to go. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, we will next have a group of 3 people telling us their stories of their pathways towards citizenship. And our first speaker is Khalid Mashidi. He is a member of the Islamic Center of Tallahassee. We met Khalid as part of the Just Faith group, where we studied kind of comparative religions of the Catholic and the Islamic religions at both places, at Good Shepherd and at the Islamic Center. And and the best thing I think that came out of that, in addition to learning the information, was the friendships that we developed. And we're going to get back together and visit with Zumzum, I think, pretty soon, one of the women. Khalid came to the United States in 2005 from Pakistan. He has degrees in physics, mathematics, geology, and computer science. He was a professional geologist in Pakistan. He's the father of 2, and today works as an office coordinator in the medical center, And we thank him for being here today, and we're grateful for that. Would you come up here?
I begin in the name of God, who is most beneficent and merciful. All praise to God, who is the Lord of worlds. My name is Amen. Actually, I say Amin, so I couldn't say. My name is Khalid Mashhadi, and first I I'm very thankful to Good Shepherd Church and the organizer of this symposium who invites me here to share my story. That's not a big story, it's a very simple story. And especially Suzanne, and she provided me an opportunity to see some old friends, Fred and Miss Anna. I don't see the daughter Anna, but I know you. Okay, so the first point which I have to discuss, that why I'm here, why did I move here. Basically, personally, the reason for my moving is family reunification, because my whole family was here and I was in Pakistan by myself. The reason of this separation was because when my parents moved here, if kids are more than 21 years, they cannot be the part of, as per the immigration law, they cannot be the part of the family, so they didn't consider me. So what happened that when your parents are here, your family is here, after got a citizenship, they can sponsor you. So my whole family was here. I was in Pakistan by myself. I was working because I couldn't come with them. But still another question. Okay, I was here for my family purposes, but why my family was here? Okay, my father first time came into United States in 1985. He spent his more than 40 years in education field. He is a retired educator. He is still live in Tallahassee. So he always emphasized the education, good education, quality education. So when he came here in 1985 first time, he studied the education system and he realized that comparatively the US education system is better than the education system which we have in our region, because of many reasons. Because the South Asia is a third world country or whatever, so they don't have the grants, they don't have a pretty much budget for the education. So, and they have research, but in high level science and technology research they don't have. But in United States, I can say that the number of universities which are in the United States, I think we don't have the number of high schools that they have. So my father realized that he can, because he always wished to provide us best education. He always emphasized and focused on the education. So he decided to move here. There was an application process which took so long, but by the time, because at that time he had multiple visas. He back and forth he used to come and go or whatever. But in 1997, when my family got the immigrant visa, so my mom and my all siblings moved here. Florida, because we like the weather. Because before that my father was in New York. In New York, some harsh and winter season. It's not for everyone, because it belongs to the hot region. So Florida is good and also beautiful state. So we decided to live here. In 1997, my father and my whole family, as a permanent resident alien, entered into the United States. And after the 5 years of his residency, he sponsored me. And after some procedure work, I came into the United States in 2005. So my personal reason was the family reunification, but the main thing is education. And yes, I know there is a debate here that we don't have a good education system. Finland has a very good, Germany has good, I know. But first, I'm talking about the comparison. Comparatively, this one is better. And also we should have these kinds of debates, because this is necessary for the improvements. Okay, if we think that yes, we are the best ones, so we cannot improve. So always we should have this kind of debate that yes, we are not good and we need to improve. So that's the thing. And society always needs the educated people. Society needs professional doctors, attorneys, and so on. For example, if we don't have professional doctors, what will happen? Quickly will increase. Thanks God, we don't know about the quickly here, because if we have, I don't know, at least I don't know, because we have a lot of qualified doctors here, good school of medicines here, quacks, yes, quickly, quack means non-qualified doctor, and quickly the quacks who adopt this profession. Okay, so in third world countries, quacks are very common. Why? Because they don't have the doctors, and if they have, doctors are very expensive. Comparatively to quacks are, very easy. There is no appointment or nothing, and you just go and they can do. And quacks are not only harmful for the health of the society, I think it's for the life of the people also. Because it's a joke is very common in Pakistan that a farmer went to a quack because his one leg has some discoloration, and that leg was turning into blue. So he went to the quack, said, "It's a problem." Quack said, "It's a poison, and I have to chop this one. Otherwise it can spread in your whole body and you can die." He said yes. He chopped his leg. After a while, he went back and said, "My another leg has the same problem." He examined and said, "I need to chop this one." He was unable to move. Okay, I can fix 2 wooden legs. After a few weeks, he realized that his wooden legs are also discoloration and turning into glue. He went to quack again and said, "The same problem with the wooden legs." Quack examined and said, "Oh, I got it. This is the color of your fabrics of your pant." So this is the quackery. Okay, so we need always the highly educated, qualified, and professional. So my father, and I'm glad that my father did this one, because when I moved here, I could not be the full-time student here. I started working and different things. But my siblings who moved here, they were at the teenage or below the teenage. They went to school, college, university. They get a good education. Some my siblings are still working and improving their education. So this was the basic reason. And education, I think, if you are educated people, either you are in United States or you are in anywhere else, economic problem, you cannot have the economic problem. So education is number one in my perspective. The second point which Susan gave me, that what issues or problems I face here. Life is nothing without challenges. It can be many problems, small problems. I think accent problem, some kind of, you can say, language barrier, which I still have an accent problem. People sometimes don't understand me, and I also understand people. And I remember when I was new here, and I was in dollar store, and I saw a very older lady. So just for courtesy, I said, "Hey ma'am, how are you doing?" She said, "Huh? How are you doing? Huh?" I asked her very slowly, "How are you doing?" She said, "If you want to live in the United States, you have to speak English." So that was the accent problem basically. Maybe I was the delivery of my words at that time the different. So problems also in Pakistan we have a right hand side driving, here is left hand side driving. These are things, but I mean maybe within a year or two that was not a problem. Yeah, it happened. It happened one or two times, but I mean it's good. Now I'm very perfect, but I cannot drive now on right hand side. Yes, look, the people's, I mean, every kind of people everywhere, but mostly people are good. Okay, you can have a stereotypical situation, but if you have a diversity, then it can happen. Okay, everywhere. But mostly people are good. Okay, and also this was my responsibility to be a positive. Okay, for example, this is also another job that, for example, if someone says, "Are you pretty annoying?" Just focus on pretty and be a positive. So you should be positive. I think you don't understand. Okay, and as far as concerned, you are. Yeah, I went to the Tallahassee Community College for ESL, English as a second language, but my teacher said you don't need to be here because he was teaching grammar and composition, which was not my problem. My problem was the accent. So he said you go to the public and you speak with the public, practice, and then you can have it. So yeah, practice. So I mean I went, but they said this is not for you. So that's why I didn't continue with that one. As far as concerned the citizenship part, because after the completion of my 5 year, United States USCIS has a procedure. You just follow the procedure, study and follow. So I did that one. I didn't have any problem, and I got citizenship. I need to pass a test of government and language and geography. Yeah. Yes, which I did, and that's it. Yeah. No, not on top-bound part. Basically, I passed the interview in Jacksonville, and I took oath at Federal Supreme Court in Tallahassee. Yeah. In 2010, not now. Okay. If anyone has any question? Yes, sir.
How difficult was it to understand the story of both the government and
Personally, I don't feel any problem. Yeah, because when I started my immigration procedure, that was after 9/11. So after 9/11, there were many security issues. There were a lot of paperwork, a lot of things which I did already in Pakistan. When I moved here, my whole family was citizens, so everyone was familiar about the procedures. So I didn't have any problem. Yes. I'm not. I used to teach, but in Pakistan, not now. But I was basically a professional geologist there, and then my parents moved here. So because the profession of geology needs to go suburb or remote areas. So I moved back to my hometown, and then I used to teach in a college. In a college level students, yes. Thank you. God bless all of you.
Two speakers are Daniel and Vida Aldonado. Daniel and Vida are from El Salvador originally. They immigrated more than 30 years ago. They have 3 daughters, and they are members of St. Thomas the Apostle Church in Quincy. And I know the one thing is that they're much beloved by Father Son. So if you would come up and give us a few.
Antita Maldonado, originally from El Salvador. We have 3 daughters and 4 lovely grandkids.
Daniel Maldonado, from a small village outside Agua Caliente in San Salvador.
Yes, I feel so far away.
That's good. I think I'm going to start. I am the first one of 11 children in my family. I was only able to go to school 6th grade back in my country because my father and my mother never went to school. Pretty much, they never learned how to read and write. And they want all of us to learn, read and write Spanish. So I went to 6th grade, and they wanted everybody to learn the language, read and write. But at that time, there was another issue. It was the civil war going on in El Salvador, and some of the young people were taken from the school away. So my father said, well, I want you to continue going to school because you might be one of them too. So I stopped going to school at that time, and so my older brothers can go to school because they were smaller.
I'm the second one of 7 kids. I left El Salvador due to the Civil War also. At that time, a lot of people from my hometown, which was the same small town that Daniel was from too. Everybody that could, they was able to leave, were leaving. So during the Civil War, my brother, which was 16 at that time, he was kidnapped by the guerrillas, and so it was a very difficult time for my family. After a lot of crying, praying, he was released. So since a lot of people were leaving during that time, I was only 20 years old, and I remember some of my relatives were leaving. So I asked my parents too if I could leave, and at that time they were thinking that I was just joking. So they say, no, of course you cannot leave. So I had compared to other people a good job back then, and they didn't see a reason other than giving me the okay to come so that I can bring my brother with me later on. So some relatives were leaving, so I just said, yes, of course I'm gonna leave. Now my sisters, they are living in El Salvador, they still question me about how come that you are the weakness. I mean, the more weak in the family, and you were the one who ended up leaving. So all I can feel right now that's the plan that God had for me, because neither one of my sisters left, and I was the only one. So maybe 3 years later, I helped my brother to come to the United States also.
I did have, several occasions when I was almost killed. Being a young person was kind of difficult at that time because you were suspicious that you were probably part of the rebels. And 2 or 3 times I was stopped, put aside, and I was told that I was going to be killed. I didn't tell my parents at that time. I just knew that if I stayed, I would not live a little longer than maybe 6 months or a year. So when I told them that I was leaving, they didn't believe me. But I said, I think I got to leave because I don't think I'm safe. A lot of my friends, they were killed. When I saw the video, I saw a lot of the people that at the border. It reminds me of all my friends that I saw killed, that I saw laying on the streets, and the dogs were eating them, and things like that were very common. So I knew that it was really difficult. I was a coach for a soccer team, and And many times, the guerrillas will come to play with us, and they would just put their rifles on the side and get in to play. So what I did was just leave, the soccer field, and everybody did pretty much the same, just to be safe, just in case the army might come at that moment and everybody will get killed. So when I left, I was 21. I came alone. I didn't have any family over here in the U.S. I didn't know the language. I didn't have any money. I didn't have any documents. I don't have pretty much nothing. And the only thing that I got with me was the experience of family. So to me, that was, God and the experience of the family that I got with me. When I came to the U.S., I didn't have any job. I didn't have anybody to help me. I didn't have anything. It's really difficult from coming from a family to where you know anybody and you don't know what to do. Pretty much just trying to save your life. So I started that way. I do remember, I still do, and I know that I wanted to study, but I didn't have the chance back home. So when I came to the U.S., I still wanted to learn something. I want to at least learn a way of working in a different way. And a couple of years later, I met Vita, and we decided to go back to school. I was able to get my high school diploma and go back to study some college education, computer programming, real estate studies, and things like that. So we put together the family, and from there, our life has been very successful. In 1986, I think Mr. Ritchie was talking about the amnesty from President Reagan, and that's how we got, started the process to get legalize our documents. No, I just came through Mexico, It was, how did I get to Florida? I had to, like everybody else, pay a coyote to help you out throughout, Guatemala and Mexico, and walk many days in the desert, crossing, at night, walking day and night, and that's how I came from Mexico to the U.S. It is. It is. Well, they were not only walking, but we also used transportation from time to time. But there were times that we had to walk, for days. It was around $3,000 at that time that we had to pay that, coyote to help us, walk and come to the U.S. I did not have, job skills per se. I know that I was a really hardworking person, and anything that I can work on, I was, pretty much on it. The first job that I got was in construction. The boss told me, I want to give you a job, cleaning, so you can, pick up the trash and do things like that. And I said, no, I want to be a carpenter. He said, you don't know how to use the chainsaw, things like that. I said, just give me the opportunity and I will do it. And a week later, he put me to work with the supervisor. And then the supervisor said, he's going to be my helper. So about 6 months later, I have a crew, it's myself, working, building houses. So it was very quickly that I learned how to do that. Oh, no, never. Mm-hmm. At that time, having somebody that can at least explain to you, the culture, the laws, how things are really working around, it would help me a lot because I did not know. I was just blind. You are just dropped in a different place. People do things different. They look at you different. They sometimes just like the way you look, you might be suspicious, and even though in your heart is completely different, but you don't know how things are done in this place. That would have been very helpful. I didn't. I did not. After I worked for 2 years in construction back in Houston, the company closed, and one of my brothers was here in Quincy, and he called me and said, if you want to come over here, you can get a job over here very easy. I don't think we should. I think we should have a control border that we can help the people come in a different way, not open completely. We have a country that it needs, also like any other country, needs to have some regulations so that we know that people can follow the law and the rules. Not necessarily send people to educate the people, but at least, the situation that we have in our countries are very difficult. Not situations that many people understand if you explain to them over here, unless you go and see. That's not something you can explain that easy.
I believe that each situation should be looked closely, because in our case, I believe we have been good citizens. We just focus on going to school. We both now work for the state government for 28 years, and he and Daniel for 25. So, we really concentrate on educating our daughters, which we have twins. They both work for Capital Regional, and the other one works for Department of Education. So, a lot of people, I guess, come to United States, to help themselves and also to see for the community. In our case, I believe with God's help, that has been the case. We have been members of St. Thomas the Apostle for about 30 years, and our main goal is to help others. So that's not the case for other people, so each case individually. That's right.
Talking about the path to citizenship, in 1986, when we started doing all the paperwork, we did look for help with lawyers. And many times, it takes a long time for that process. I think Catholic Charities had at that time an office to help with the immigration documentation, so they did help us at the beginning. After that, we have done all the paperwork ourselves, but it takes, a long time. To me, I think it was about 15 years by the time that I got my citizenship. Be patient with waiting and follow up with documentation and things like that. So it's not something quick. So a lot of prayer, be patient. They gave us a permit to begin with. There was like in 1988, gave us a permit for about 2-3 years. Then we got a residency, and then we had to wait about 5 years to apply for citizenship, and then it was another 6 or 8 years to wait for citizenship.
Thank you for having us here today.
Last person who will tell us about her pathway to citizenship is Daniela Donoso. I know that she is a respected member of the team of the Center for the Advancement of Human Rights at FSU, and she is a student at FSU College of Law. So would you please come up and welcome Daniela.
Thank you. So my name is Daniela. I was born in Quito, Ecuador, and I actually came to the U.S. because my family was here. I was 6 months old, so I didn't really have a choice of why I came to the U.S. I grew up in Miami, Florida, And I had this silly idea that the rest of the U.S. was like Miami, where everyone really, were either multicultural or bilingual. And my family came to the U.S. with tourist visas. My dad came on a worker's visa. We have a U.S. citizen uncle, his brother, who petitioned for our family. And as Ms. Ritchie spoke before about the long line, we were in the country waiting for this approval. And it did come years later, actually, but because we had overstayed that visa, if we left the country to finish the process, we wouldn't be able to come back for 10 years. And so it's, and I'm sure Ms. Ritchie touched on this as well with, not knowing the process when you're in this country, no one telling you can't stay that long, you're gonna get a 10-year ban, and so it's one of those things that just happens, and then your family has to make a decision, really tough decisions. And so it really wasn't until I was 13 years old that my parents sat us down and told us, you're undocumented. And at the time, I really didn't know what that meant. But they said, your older brother, I have two older brothers, they said, they might not be able to get into college and we're gonna have to go back to Ecuador. And at this point, I was just angry. I was like, this is my whole life. Like, yeah, I speak Spanish, but I grew up here in public school. Like, I love my friends. I love Miami. And I didn't really know the full weight of what would happen if we left the country. My brothers did end up going and getting into great colleges, and they had scholarships, and they were RAs, and they were, were really succeeding in that. My parents decided, okay, we're going to stay until they graduate college. And then sophomore year of high school, we moved to Jacksonville, Florida. And for me, coming from Miami, that was a huge culture shock. I honestly, my high school was next to the beach, and I had never seen so many white blondes before in my life in one place. And it wasn't really until high school that I really struggled with my own identity. People assumed that I was Mexican because I spoke Spanish, and not that there's anything wrong with being Mexican, but I'm Ecuadorian. And just not being able to tell people like I'm undocumented was really hard, because in high school you're getting a license, you're traveling. I just became really good at lying about, myself. I had to tell them, yeah, it's because insurance costs too much money. No, I can't go on a mission trip with you to the Bahamas because I can't afford it, or I'm doing something else. And I'm sure you guys know, like, you're undocumented, you don't have a social security number, you can't get a license, a work permit. So I couldn't have, a job the way that my friends could in high school. I couldn't, volunteer in certain places that asked me for a social security number. Again, couldn't go on mission trips overseas. But really, the biggest thing was my identity. And, like, was I Ecuadorian enough when I was around my family when they came to visit? Like, was I American enough with my friends? Did I have an accent when I spoke English, when I spoke Spanish? And so it was a big time in my life when I just needed the Lord to, like, show me that first I'm his child, and then second comes everything else. And in high school, my father's dad passed away in Ecuador. And it was a big loss for our family. He was like a big deal in Ecuador. And the harder part for me was knowing that my father couldn't go back, to say goodbye. Couldn't grieve with his own family during that time. Couldn't go to the funeral. And then there came a point when my mother's father was sick, and my family said, we have to go back. Like, we can't be here anymore. Like, my mom has a medical degree in Ecuador. She said, I'm supposed to be taking care of him. And that was around my senior year. I was applying to colleges, and that was tough. Again, not navigating the application process without a social security number, without knowing, am I a legal resident? I know I'm not an international student. What do I put? And luckily, my brothers had been through that process, but every year it's different wherever you're applying. So during that time, my parents, I wasn't getting into the schools I wanted to. my parents said, we're going to probably go back. My brothers, one of them was getting his master's in engineering, and they were going to come later, but we decided to speak with an attorney, and they said, this is summer of 2012, they said, don't leave yet, just hold on, something's going to happen soon. I think so. And 2 weeks later, the Obama administration came out with Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA. And yeah, actually my brothers and I, all three of us qualified for this. And so it was another one of those big decisions. It was like, I decided, all right, I'm going to leave my life here in the U.S., everything that I've known, grown up with, and go back to Ecuador, to a country that I hadn't been to since I was 3 years old. But because of DACA, we decided to stay. And I was lucky that a guidance counselor really helped me during my senior year application process and encouraged me to apply to Florida State University, which is probably the best decision I've ever made. Go Noles. I came to college, and there was a big weight lifted once DACA came out, because I could tell people, yeah, I'm undocumented, but I'm safe from deportation because of DACA. And DACA, it gives you a 2-year legal authorization to be in the country. It's not a legal status per se, and you have to renew it every 2 years. I actually did my own renewal yesterday at the center with Vanya's help. But that's the 3rd time that I've renewed. And every single time that you renew DACA, you have to pay about $495. So if you're even lucky enough, there's people in this country that qualified for it when they were able to initially apply that couldn't because they didn't have the funding for it. And so we consider ourselves lucky to be able to even apply for DACA. But I came to FSU and I found an immigrant advocacy organization that talked openly about being undocumented and what students face and those struggles. And it was an amazing group that got me connected with other advocates. And soon I was working at the Center for Advancement of Human Rights, where I was on the other end helping other immigrants navigate this crazy system. And in 2014, Florida passed a law where even if you're undocumented, it doesn't even have to be DACA, you can get in-state tuition. And that was a huge win for students like me to be able to get in-state tuition. And really being an advocate and wanting to, and during the Trump era when Trump first got elected, and he kept threatening to end DACA, that was really tough, right? It was like, what am I going to do? Like, what's going to happen? Like, he could take it away in a snap of a finger, and then what did my family and I do? And my parents really instilled in us the need for education, and we were lucky that they didn't expect us to work or contribute after we graduated high school, because a lot of undocumented students in this country feel that way, and a lot of undocumented students in this country are expected to work right after. And so that's why you see so many students fall into depression, because they think, like, why do I need to study? Is it worth it? Like, I can't do anything in this country. I'm just going to work in construction, like, the rest of my life. But, so I was really lucky that my parents wanted us to invest in our education. And so, what better way to, not think about the news or what was going on in 2016 than to dig into law books. So, it was a lot of leadership and mentors from the center, like Vanya, that really encouraged me to pursue a law degree, to be a better, well-rounded advocate. And so that's why I decided to go to FSU Law. And one of the last questions was the pathway to citizenship. So for me, there is no pathway to citizenship. So with DACA, you have to renew it every 2 years, but that's it. That's all you get. Yes. If I marry a U.S. citizen, I can. So no ring on my finger yet. So that is a possibility. I don't want the government to tell me that you need to get married in order to be able to stay here. So I'm a little prideful in that way, and it's like, Yes, and it's because of a case. His name is Jose Godinez. He was undocumented, didn't even have DACA when he went to FSU Law School, and because of him, they passed a bill where you could take the Florida Bar exam and practice law. Yeah. Yes, every 2 years it can. So DACA, again, it's a hot political issue always, right? So right now there's bills that with a pathway to citizenship for DACA and TPS holders. So again, voting is huge and really important. Yes.
I don't know immigration law, but it used to be that universities and non-profit universities, these state governments were outside the quota for H-1B. They could get as many H-1Bs as they wanted to estimate the state of the individual. I know a new person in this case. Now, if you're on DACA, you can qualify for an H-1B if the right organization wants to hire you?
No, and it would be case by case basis, but some of those visas require you to go back to your country to work, and it's really difficult to be able to do that. And you have to either have come, because I came legally, that looks different from someone who crossed the border too. So. Unlawful presence. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. If I don't renew in time, if my employer doesn't have an updated work authorization, and we've seen this with clients at the center where USCIS is taking too long to process, and then someone will lose their job for a month, let's say, and then they have to start from the bottom again when they get rehired. So it all depends on if you're renewing on time, if your employer can't turn you away for having a work authorization if they're not supposed to. I'm sure it happens often if they don't want to hire you for that reason, but. Now, 2 years. Well, if it gets approved, right? So my DACA expires in July of this summer, so that's because it varies. The last time I renewed, because some of our clients, the applications were taking too long, I said, let me try and do it early, let's see what happens. And they received my application and approved it within 3 weeks, which was like unheard of. It could take, 180 days. They give you a normal processing time between 120 and 180 days for it to be adjudicated. If they don't get it done by July, then I'm out of job, or I can't have employment. Luckily at FSU, I can still be a student, and so they can't take that status away. So no one can take my education away from me. But as far as I'm sure the center could accommodate, but that's the reality is I wouldn't be able to have lawful employment. No, but if I accrue more unlawful presence, it's just going to hurt me in the future when I do, let's say I do marry a U.S. citizen and then I want to apply for lawful residence, that could hurt me then.
Well, hopefully something will come through and you'll be able to get it on your own. So if you marry that person for you, and not you need that pathway.
Exactly. Yeah. Great, thank you guys.
A speaker who will speak to us about the Catholic social teaching and how the Catholic Church, the Church's position on immigration, is Deacon Ray Aguado from St. Anne in Gulf Breeze, Florida. He was in the Navy and retired with 25 years of in the Federal Bureau of Prisons, so you don't mess with Dick and Ray. He came to Florida from California in 1989. He was ordained as a deacon in 2013. He's married with, how many, 3 grandchildren? 2? 1. Well, only 1. Oh, he's wait. He's a coordinator, main thing is, he's a coordinator of the Office of Advocacy and Justice in the Pensacola Tallahassee Diocese since 2013, and he is my friend. He again will speak to us about the Catholic Church's position on immigration and how the Catholic social teachings lead us to that position. Deacon Ray?
Good to be here. Recognize some of you from other events, but so as Suzanne said, I'm a deacon at St. Anne's Catholic Church in Gulf Breeze, but I also work for the diocese. I work at the Pastoral Center in the Office of Advocacy and Social Justice. So one of the things I do, if you read your program, is we go around to various parishes and organizations talking about Catholic social teaching and then specific areas within Catholic social teaching, and I also help to coordinate prison ministry in the diocese. But I'm in trouble right now with my wife. This is my wife, and I caught her with her mouth full, but now I'm actually in double trouble because I caught her with her mouth full. But I'm in trouble because I said I was married for 35 years, and she saw that, and she said, we've been married for 37. So I'm in trouble. Okay, I'm going to talk about principles of Catholic social teaching with regards to migration, but I've just handed out a little quiz for you to take. Take all the time you want, but you have 2 minutes. Okay? Just kind of go over it and see how many answers you know. This is Catholic social teaching in general. So I want to see how much we know about Catholic social teaching. Okay, time's up. Wasn't that 2 minutes? Was that 2 minutes? No? Oh, it's okay. We're going to go. Don't worry, we're not handing this in. You're not going to get graded on it, okay? We're going to go over it together as a group. So number 1, the Church's teaching on human life and dignity leads the Church to, who says E? Yeah? I'm going to check the answer key. Yes. Yes, that's the correct answer. Very good. So number 2, human dignity is best promoted when? D, the common good. Who can explain what the common good is? Yeah, that's good. That's good. Anybody else? Everybody? In a community? Okay. Okay. We're gonna talk a little bit about the common good. Number 3, the central social institution is. Who says C? B? You're right. B. You guys are good, man. You guys can't stump. I cannot stump this crowd. Here we go. Number 4. People have a right to all the above. A basic moral test of society is C? C it is. Okay, very good. I could just sit down now, right? You guys know everything you need to know. Nothing I need to teach. Okay. Workers have a right to what? This is a good one. People talk about this one. It is E. It is all the above, okay? Work is a form of continuing participation in God's creation. Workers have fundamental rights. All right, let's go to number 7. A just wage. What is a just wage? It is C. It is C. Okay, very good. C. Enough for a family to meet its basic living expenses. Solidarity requires what? Yes, right. A. How we care about others no matter where. This has to do with migration now. Where they live or how different they may appear. Okay, so solidarity, that's important. Okay, number 9. The Catholic view of the environment is that? C. Mistreating the natural world hurts humanity also. And the last one, the church's social teaching calls Catholics to E. All the above. All right. You guys are good. You guys are very good. All right. Actually, I have a card that's going to be passed out. My wife Linda and Suzanne is going to help me out with this. And now, actually, we should have been doing it when I was doing the quiz. What's being passed out is a card that's published by the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. Okay? And it's the 7 themes of Catholic social teaching. 7 themes of Catholic social teaching. And these 7 themes of Catholic social teaching have been derived from letters written by current and past popes, documents written by bishops. And okay, it's a conglomeration, it's a compilation of all these things. The very first one is life and dignity of human person, and that is the foundation of everything else. That's the foundation of everything else. And I don't want to be a talking head up here, so can I get someone just to volunteer to read that for us, nice and loud? Somebody has a nice loud voice. Any volunteers? Yeah.
The Catholic Church proclaims that human life is sacred and that the dignity of the human person is the foundation of a moral vision for society. This belief is the foundation of all the principles of our social teaching. In our society, human life is under direct attack from abortion and euthanasia. Human life is threatened by cloning, embryonic stem cell research, and the use of the death penalty. The intentional targeting of civilians in war or terrorist attacks is always wrong. Catholic teaching calls on us to work to avoid war. Nations must protect the right to life by finding effective ways to prevent conflicts and resolve them by peaceful means. We believe that every person is precious, that people are more important than things, and that the measure of every institution is whether it threatens or enhances the life and dignity of the human person.
Thank you very much, Jane. Thank you, Jane. Okay, so, like I said, that's the foundation of all our Catholic teaching. Every life is sacred, every life has dignity. Why? Why? That's it. Because we were all created in the image and likeness of God, right? So, can that dignity be earned? No. Can that dignity ever be taken away? No. Okay. Great. As long as you got that, then everything else makes sense, right? Then when I get into the principles of social teaching regarding migration, it'll make sense, okay? The other thing is, let's turn to the back of the card. We won't go over all 7 themes, but I wanted to hit the theme regarding solidarity. And I'd like to have another volunteer.
I can do it. Solidarity, you don't do that.
Can you say it loud? Okay, go ahead.
Sure. We are one human family, whatever our national, racial, ethnic, economic, and ideological differences. We are our brothers and sisters keepers wherever they may be. Loving our neighbor has global dimensions in a shrinking world. At the core of the virtue of solidarity is the pursuit of justice and peace. Pope Paul VI taught us that if you want peace, work for justice. The gospel calls us to be peacemakers. Our love for all our sisters and brothers demands that we promote peace in the world surrounded by violence and conflict.
Thank you very much. That was good. So, we are our brother's keepers, right? It doesn't say as long as they're U.S. citizens, right? It doesn't say as long as they're here with documents. I don't read that anywhere in there, right? So, solidarity. We're one human family. One human family, no matter where we're from, race, ethnicity, etc. Okay? Gospel calls us to be peacemakers. Peacemakers. Okay. Any questions about anything I've said so far? Yes. That's correct. Okay. So, but can that, the dignity of that life, of that sacredness of that life ever be taken, can be taken away? It can be taken away, but what you're talking about is how the, the situation of the person. But the fact that that life is sacred no matter what the situation is. Okay? That's what the foundation of this first principle that we talked about. Right? Okay, that was good. Good. Anything else before we go further? Okay, so now we're getting into the Catholic the principles of social teaching relating to migration. All right. Number one, persons have a right to find opportunities in their homeland. Can someone volunteer to read that? Yes, right, Peter.
Persons have the right to find opportunities in their homeland, number one. All persons have the right to find in their own countries the economic, political, and social opportunities to live in dignity and achieve a full life through the use of their God-given gifts. In this context, work that provides a just living wage is a basic human need.
Thank you, Peter. Any questions about that? Okay, the right to find in their own country, right, opportunities. They have that right to achieve a full life. Okay, be able to use their talents and their gifts. Okay, first principle relating to migration. Can I get someone else to read number 2 for me? Bill, go ahead.
Church recognizes the role of the earth to most people. The persons cannot find it for the work of the evolved focus on their community. They have a right to find work elsewhere where they survive. The obligation to provide those who come to this.
People have a right to be able to support themselves, to be able to survive, to feed their families, right? If their country of origin can't provide that for whatever reason, right, then they should have a right to be able to migrate to another area to be able to do that, right? So that happens, I mean, that happens within our own country, although we're talking about, our own country, but people move around all the time, right, for jobs, right? I mean, if, let's say we were born in a certain state, and let's say there was a law that says we couldn't move to another state for a better job opportunity, right? Would that be fair? Wouldn't be fair. Of course, we're not really comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges, but it's the same principle. It's the same principle. If a person in a certain country, for whatever the reason, can't find opportunity to support themselves, to support their family, then Catholic social teaching says that they have a right to support themselves and their families, and they have a right to migrate, to be able to do that. Yes. Okay, so who can answer that? What's a sovereign nation?
Any country that over any country that over
Anything else? Anybody else want to add to that? Yes. Okay. It doesn't say that. No, it doesn't say that. It just says they have a right to migrate. But we haven't gotten to the other principles yet. Okay? So it just says that they have a right to find work elsewhere in order to survive. Okay, can you read number 3 for us?
I will.
Okay, thanks.
Sovereign nations have the right to control their borders. The truth recognizes the right of sovereign nations to control their territory and their borders. However, wealthier nations which have the ability to better protect and keep their residents have a strong obligation to accommodate migration flows.
So, I mean, I forget the lady's name, I should remember, but the first woman who spoke, the attorney, Elizabeth, right? She mentioned that our immigration system is broken, right? It's broken. We have people coming into this country for, they want to come here because they can't find the opportunity, or for whatever reason, they cannot support their families in their country of origin. So they're coming here anyway. They're coming here anyway. So what number 3 is saying is that wealthier nations, and guess what? We're a wealthier nation, right? So wealthier nations should have okay, first of all, they have the right to control their borders. Okay, church is saying that the U.S. has a right to control its borders. And so that they're not calling for open borders or anything like that, right? It's not a call for open borders, okay? But they have an obligation to accommodate migration flows. People are coming into this country, they're coming anyway. They're coming here, whether it's through documented or undocumented, they're coming, right? They're coming for various reasons, and according to Elizabeth? Was it Elizabeth? I'm terrible. Elizabeth, right? Apparently, there's a need. We have a need for these workers. We have a need for these workers, right? So why not accommodate the migration flow, but control it, right? Do it in a controlled manner, right? That's all the church is saying. Did you have something? But if, so sometimes the faucet is full when we open, and sometimes it's not as much. I mean, it has to be flexible, right? Depending on the flow. Depending on the flow. Yes. Okay, let's go to number 4. Who wants to read number 4? Somebody? Yes, right here.
Refugees and asylum seekers should be afforded protection. Those who flee war and persecution should be protected by the global community. This requires at minimum that migrants have the right to claim refugee status without incarceration and to have their claims fully considered by a competent authority. In a reasonable period of time.
Is that happening now? Maria's not happening now? Maria's with Catholic Chamber Immigration and Refugee Services, so you'll hear from her, but it's not happening now. Okay, in the interest of time, I have like 3 minutes, maybe? Number 5. Number 5, yes.
Human dignity and human rights of undocumented migrants should be respected, regardless of their legal status. Migrants, like all persons, possess inherent human dignity that should be respected. Often they are subject to punitive laws and harsh treatment by enforcement officers in both receiving and transit countries. Government policies that respect the basic human rights of the undocumented are necessary.
It's pretty self-explanatory. self-explanatory, right? Human rights. I mean, we shouldn't be allowed to violate people's human rights. Again, Elizabeth said, you know, being here in an undocumented status is not a crime, right? They haven't committed any crime. So, that's pretty self-explanatory. One thing I wanted to mention is that these are Catholic principles, okay, from the global Catholic Church. This is not USCCB Catholic principles. This is, yes, right? This is from the Catholic Church, not the U.S. Catholic Church, okay? The principles on your card, the 7 themes, that's the global Catholic Church. That's not even though that's produced by USCCB, that's for the entire church, okay? And these principles are not Republican, they're not Democrat, they're not Libertarian, they're Catholic. They're Catholic. So I want to end with one thing. I want to put a plug in, and we're going to hand this out later. Here in Tallahassee, there's what's called Catholic Days at the Capitol, and this year it's March 26th and 27th. And it's a time when Catholics from across the state of Florida come here to Tallahassee, to the Capitol, to advocate for issues that we either support or oppose various bills that are going through the session as we speak, right? So if you haven't been, it's a great opportunity for you as a Catholic to make your voice heard, right, in the common square. I know a lot of people, you know, you all live there, I guess, or close by, and the Capitol is very accessible. But sometimes it's like some people, you know, I used to live in Southern California, and Disneyland was very accessible. We didn't really go because it was right there. I mean, but the Capitol, I'm not saying that the Capitol is Disneyland. I'm not saying, right? Okay. So I have these packets and a brochure, a schedule of what goes on, and a registration form. I'm going to have it on the back table, actually, if you'd like to get one. You have to register to go. And it does cost money. It's not a free event, but it's $70 for a 2-day event. But the good thing about you all here is you live here. So we have people coming up from Miami and Central Florida that not only have to take a bus or drive themselves up here to Tallahassee, then they have to pay for lodging, right? So you all have it made because you live here, right? You don't have to pay for lodging. So.
And it's part of our education in social justice.
It is. It's an opportunity. You know, we Catholics, we do a great job doing charitable works. We feed the hungry, we shelter the homeless, we visit the imprisoned, right? We do a great job doing charitable works. We don't do a very good job when it comes to getting involved in the legislative process. I shouldn't say that because I'm sure some people here do. Oh, that is. Okay, so what, and that's our next panel. Very good. Ingrid Delgado is from the Florida Catholic Conference that coordinates that, so I have to go. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you. And ask Linda to be easy on me because of the 37-year thing. Okay.
All by himself. Well, you guys have been asking all the right questions about, so what about this, and what about that, and what about the other? As you can see, and I'm not going to go through their creds because they're in the back of the program, but we have got across the spectrum people with experience of their own and working in the political spectrum and in the hands-on area as well. So they're going to give you a really, really, really concise idea of what they're specifically doing on this issue now. And more important, they're going to tell you specific things that each of us or us as a group or whatever can do to try to make the stranger more welcome among us. So I'm going to turn around and I think we'll start with Maria Roswell, the Catholic Church.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I thank everybody for coming here and for being so active in this topic. It is a topic that really touches all of us as Christians. I want to begin my talk by giving out a quote from the Bible, which I believe sums up our calling. It's from Matthew 25:35, and it says, "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. And I have this quote in every single one of my emails. So, Catholic Charities of Northwest Florida has offices in Pensacola, Fort Walton Beach, Panama City. Right now we're under a transition because of the hurricane. And we have an office here in Tallahassee. We have been serving immigrants and refugees for more than 40 years. What we do is that we help people basically with family-based immigration cases. So for example, my husband, who is a U.S. citizen, wanted to petition me. I'm from Colombia in South America. Catholic Charities would have helped him to bring me over. We also work with some asylum cases. We work with VAWA, which is a specific type of benefit for victims of domestic violence. We also work with U visas, and we also have a very, very small refugee resettlement program. The program is very small because we only take what is called U.S. tie cases. How long do I have? Okay, all right, thank you. So a U.S. tie can be either a member of the family or a friend. And they help us, the agency, in the resettlement process of the refugee. Elizabeth said that the refugee process takes about 2 years. In our experience, a lot or most of the cases have taken even longer than that. They are the most vetted types of immigrants that come into the United States.
Is there something in particular that those of us that are here can do for the people that you are bringing into the United States?
Absolutely. So first of all, I think that we need to change vocabulary and attitude, and we need to start spreading the love that we are called to spread. So for example, 90% of the clients of Catholic Charities are non-Catholics. So let's break that myth. Another myth is that illegals, they're not illegal, they are undocumented people. They are people overall. And it's also a myth that they come only for the benefits. And Elizabeth mentioned the anchor babies. Thank you. And they're criminals. And the chain migration does not exist. The visa diversity, as Elizabeth very well mentioned it, is only 5% of the immigration in the United States. So basically, that is a myth. All right, and something else, we cannot call ourselves Christians and spread hate about others. It doesn't matter how they are here in this country. We need to show them love. We need to help them to resettle in the community. As Vida and Daniel said, it would have helped a lot if they had somebody to explain them how different this society is, how laws do apply here, because in many of our countries, we can cross the street wherever we want. Here, you can get a fine for doing that. You cannot drive without a license. You cannot drive under the influence of anything. Even cold syrup, that you can get in trouble for that, not just drugs or alcohol.
Super. Vanya, can you tell us what's going on at the Center for the Advancement of Human Rights, and any suggestions, thoughts that you have specifically that those of us in this room could take advantage of?
Absolutely, and I also want to thank you for being here this entire morning and part of the afternoon. We really feel fortunate to have a supporting community and people caring about these issues. Definitely, it is very hard times for all of us who work in the immigration field and who work with very, I would say, vulnerable populations at the Center for the Advancement of Human Rights. In addition to many of the other missions we have, is to provide advocacy. So what does that exactly mean? Advocacy is provided to victims of different crimes. We represent victims of crimes who qualify for U visas, T visas, domestic violence, asylum seekers, special immigrant juvenile status for children who arrive here when they're under the age of 18 and who do not have a parent in the United States or both parents. We also represent DACA clients like Daniela. We have about 75 clients. What exactly do we do? We represent them under immigration cases, pro bono. Is it too loud? No. Okay. What can you do? Well, there are so many things you can do. Currently in the legislature, there is a bill that is being proposed. This is an anti-immigrant bill. Basically what it is proposing is that our local law enforcement becomes ICE. What is that going to entail? Where it's going to entail the police officers, people from the sheriff's office, all throughout the state are able to identify people who are undocumented and immediately arrest them. It is happening now. We have had cases. I had a lady the other day who called me and said, my husband is a lawful permanent resident. He was stopped. He doesn't know why. He had his brother on the passenger side. And my husband presented everything, the driver's license, whatever the officers ask, insurance. And then when he couldn't get anything on my husband, he asked his brother, who was a passenger, no business asking the brother for anything, for his documents. He was not able to provide documentation and he was arrested, taken to the Ocala jail. So it's happening right next to us. It is happening in border counties. With this bill that is being proposed, and by the way, I have copies of handouts that I have prepared, actually that my interns prepared for you, giving you a description, telling you what the bill is, but also giving you a description as to what the bill is going to do. That's a big issue. Not only because it is not humane to do something like this to people, because it's going to target people and discriminate people, and it's going to do a lot of racial profiling. It is going to create unsafe communities. Why? Because people are going to be afraid of reporting crimes. What can you do? Immediately contact your representatives. Start telling them this is not something you support. Spread the word. Educate others on what this is going to do to everyone. We've already seen it. We've already seen at the center communities of immigrants being targeted, and they won't report the crimes exactly because of that. What else can you do as a community? We have many victims of different crimes who have very, very immediate needs. I'll give you an example. A victim of domestic violence who has to flee a certain place, her house, because she is at risk. They have to go to refuge house many times. They don't have any resources. Well, as a community, we can support in many different ways. What else can you do? We have victims of human trafficking who need support from us. Right now we are looking at a labor trafficking case that actually happens more often than not. There is an organization called the Survive and Thrive Advocacy Center locally. They provide direct support to the victims. All the funding that is provided goes towards the stability of every one of the victims. Housing and really basic needs to survive on a daily basis. They are there to assist. They're helping us work on a case right now. The major roadblock that we have at this moment is housing. We don't have housing here in Tallahassee for victims of human trafficking. There is a shelter, but if you have a male victim, there's nowhere to take him other than the Kearney Center. Not ideal. And many times it can create a lot of different situations. Spreading awareness, praying. They are looking at training foster parents. There's a lot involved in human trafficking. We have U.S. citizen victims of human trafficking, minors, who definitely need the support. There is a shelter that is being built in the Pensacola area. It's not open yet. But there is a lot that citizens can do. At the moment, they're developing that program. It's going to be a pilot program through the Department of Children and Families, and they are going to be training because there is so much that takes place in providing or caring for these minors. At the moment, what can you do? Well, contact staff. They have a big fundraiser at the end of this month, on the 28th. This is something that the community can support. It is.
And I think, Jane, you have more information on that, don't you?
And I know that we have limited time, so I'll be happy to send out the flyer to give you the exact information. What else do we have? We have the International Rescue Committee. The International Rescue Committee is always in need of help. They are the resettling agency for refugees that are relocated into the Tallahassee area. We have at the center over 50 families that we've represented. All the legal representation that we do at the Center for the Advancement of Human Rights is completely free to our clients. However, many of our clients are not able to pay certain fees that it's becoming really challenging to have those ways.
So perhaps an organized or disorganized raising of funds that can be used specifically for these.
That would be amazing.
Let's put that on the list again.
I'll be happy to continue the conversation with you on
that would be
on a different day. You have.
So that's another thing then is one-on-one befriending and helping people through, which is a really good segue into asking Vida and Daniel. No, seriously, because you have gone through this. What were some of the things when you came here to this country? What were the things that people did that helped you, that would help other people coming to this country now? And what are some of the things that you wish had existed that perhaps we can look at as a community of individuals to help them become feeling less foreign and less alien?
Actually, when we got to Quincy, it wasn't that many Hispanic people there. So we suffered and we struggled a lot with the language. And because it was maybe like 3 or 4 families that I can say that they were there before we came. That was a long time ago. So we had a lot of difficult times. So I would say that it wasn't really the church at the beginning who really helped us because the language barrier. We went to church a few times to the English mass, but we couldn't really explain or socialize with the community because of the language. But there were other Hispanic families that were here for longer than us, for I would say 2 years earlier they arrived. So they were the ones who really were there to support us and guide us to whenever as soon as we got together, I was pregnant with my twins. So at that time I didn't even know English enough to go to the doctor. So a lady that was bilingual, she used to take us, we used to pay her money to take us to the doctor. So there were people here and there that support us in different ways. It was very difficult. So I guess that was, I feel like that's one of the reasons that God has used us through the church to help other families, to guide them through our experience, through retreats, because that's what I enjoy serving in the retreats, so that people, as we know, God is the only one that set us free, so that if these people, even though they don't have families here, if they get to know God, they have everything, so they don't feel lonely. So,
what can we do? I think there's a lot that we can do as individuals. Many times we know the people that are going through the difficult times. We know people that have, this, I don't know how they call it, what they put on their feet so that they can track them. People that, do not have a good lawyer. There's another thing that it would be great if we have, at least a good, honest lawyers that can help. Because many times there are some lawyers, unfortunately, that also take advantage of the situations. And I'm not talking about, lawyers in general, but sometimes there's another issue that we face. I know a lot of people that their processes are being stuck because of the processes that they were kind of get lost, they never did what they supposed to on time, things like that. So we do need, or we can help, guiding people with good guidance, people that can help, honest people that we know. What would have helped me when I came, it was somebody who would explain to me, what are the processes, what can you do, what can you not do, how can you navigate the new country in a better way. That many times you just ask, but you don't know who to ask. And I can be more open in the parishes that we, serve to tell the people, if you need guidance, come to me. I know somebody, or we can have this information. We can help you, navigate the system, the right way. And I think that's something that we're missing a lot, because it's very expensive to go through these processes, and many times by the end, after 5, 10, 15 years, you know that you don't have a process. So there's another thing, also helping, our own people that we know. Sometimes they are so frustrated, they are afraid, they cannot sleep, they get, they don't know what to do because they don't know if the next day they're going to be home with their children. And they trying to find out, who am I going to leave my children with? I mean, who is going to take care of my family? If I get deported tomorrow, I have to, they come and knock on the door and take me away. Sometimes they need support, moral support too. So we can do a lot as a community, locally with the people that we know. The thing is, and it was very nice to read that it says, welcoming the stranger. Because I think that once you get to know the people, it's not a stranger anymore. Because you know that they're just like you. You just did not know that. So I think looking for the opportunity to get somebody who looks different, who maybe is different, who has a different culture, that also helps. Because we break the barrier once we get to know somebody. When you don't know the person, you just assume who that person is. And it's very unfortunate that in this country, many times, we just put labels on the people without knowing who they are. And I think as a church, we can advocate, the entire church, how to be different, be more welcoming. Be like Jesus said, welcome the stranger.
Super, some really good ideas. Ingrid, let's let Ingrid talk, and then we can ask questions of anybody that's up here. Ingrid represents us and is an official lobbyist for the UCCB, for the Florida Conference of Catholic Bishops. She can tell us about what is up and coming, tell us what we can do, and I give it to you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. And notice that the entire panel up here are immigrants. The wonderful tamales that we had prepared for us was made by a woman with no documents who is selling these to help support her family too. So you guys have played a big part in starting.
Thank you. Thank you. So, as you mentioned, my name is Ingrid Delgado with the Florida Conference of Catholic Bishops, and we represent the 9 Catholic bishops of Florida in matters of state public policy. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops does the same thing, but regarding federal policy, right, nationally. And I do want to mention, I was taking notes as I heard some questions when Deacon Ray was up here. I do want to make the point that the Catholic Church is pro-life for the whole life. And I do understand that there are some pockets of Catholics that do feel very, very strongly about protecting the unborn, and that matters, right? Because all other fundamental human rights are based on the fundamental right to just live, to just exist, right? But it doesn't stop there. We care about all lives in all stages of life. I think one of the tables back there has this, but I have other copies. This is a list of our public policy priorities for the 2019 session. And yes, there is a pro-life section, but there's also an education section and a healthcare section and a social justice section, which basically means everything else that the Catholic bishops care about, right? And that includes the death penalty, that includes criminal justice reform, that means protecting the poor, the vulnerable, workers, the environment, etc. And so, as Deacon Ray mentioned, our annual Catholic Days at the Capitol event is coming up. And to be very honest, one of the issues for which our participants will advocate is somehow related to the unborn. Last year it had to do with crisis pregnancy centers. But there are always more than one issue. We've had up to 4 issues at a Catholic Days event, and the others will be on education, maybe the environment. This is my 6th legislative session. I think almost every year we've had like a criminal justice death penalty type issue at Catholic Days. So there is a comprehensive advocacy that comes from the bishops and by extension our office. I will say that the bottom line is that we support comprehensive immigration reform at the federal level, and for the most part will oppose piecemeal statewide policies, unless it's positive policy, right? There is policy that would allow the undocumented to have access to driver's licenses, something like that we support. In 2014, we supported a bill that became a law that allowed the undocumented or children of the undocumented to have access to in-state tuition. There's a bill this session that would allow those same youth to have access to state scholarships, right? So unless it's pro-immigrant, chances are we're going to oppose state, piecemeal type anti-immigrant policy. And so what does comprehensive immigration reform at the federal level mean? It means that we support lawful pathways to citizenship or some sort of lawful status for people that are in the country. It means that we support the expansion of employment-based and family reunification visas. Deacon Ray alluded to this earlier. Our economy creates a demand for migrant labor, but the visas that are allotted do not meet that demand. So we create that system that allows people to be in the shadows, to be undocumented, to be targets for crime. Because the reality is that the undocumented are more likely to be victims of crime than perpetrators of crime. Also, as we're calling for comprehensive immigration reform, it means addressing the root causes of migration in sending countries. If we're serious about addressing migration, we need to be serious about why people are migrating in the first place. And again, Deacon Ray talked about this in his document, that people have the right to find opportunities in their homeland. People don't walk for thousands of miles and put their lives at risk for no good reason. These are people whose lives are in danger. These are people who cannot provide for their families. And they have the right, the church teaches that they have the right to find those opportunities in their homeland. To stay where people speak their language, where their culture exists, where their families are. They have a right to not migrate. But if they cannot find those opportunities in their homeland, they have the right to migrate. They have the right to migrate. And so, something I think that goes unnoticed is that, number one, undocumented migration didn't really exist in the United States until about 1921. Okay, so when people say that, oh, my ancestors, were in a line and they came legally, not really, right? Because the system to allow undocumentation didn't start until less than 100 years ago, for the most part. Before that, there was some limits on Asians migrating to the United States. Okay, so we need to address the opportunities to migrate better. My parents are from Cuba. They were just very, very lucky that at that time, as soon as they landed on dry land, they had a documented status. But people from other countries that have similar experiences and similar stories don't have that same opportunity, that same blessing. And there's an inconsistency there that needs to be addressed. I will say that you alluded to SB 168 having to do with sanctuary policies. If there are questions, we can talk about the details of that bill, but I do want to let you know that the most recent advocacy alert that came out of our office had to do with opposing that bill. You may not have received it because your senator was not on that committee. Does that make sense? It went to the constituents in our network that were constituents of those senators. But eventually, unfortunately, we're probably going to see this bill move through the process. If and when your senator, your House representative has this bill before them, we will pre-write a message for you. You just hit send and your senator, your representative will get that. If you don't already get our advocacy alerts, please sign up today so you can start receiving them, or you can just fill out this green card and we will include you in our system. Let me make sure. And so because we also do pro-environment things, I didn't make too many copies. I'm trying to be friendly on the environment. So I only have 10 copies, but please take them if you'd like to see the specifics of why we told senators we oppose the bill. I can also email it to you. From the bottom of my heart, if you'd like to talk more than today allows, go to flaccb.org, blackfeet.org, let's talk, email me. And if you're interested to know in what's happening at the federal level, justiceforimmigrants.org is the USCCB's arm regarding migration policy.
Wow, that was short and sweet. Tremendous. Okay, so let me tell you where we're going from here. We're going to take a few minutes for people who had some questions or comments, really short questions or comments. And if you, let me tell you the whole thing first. And then what we're going to do is to come up with lists of things that we can do. So you'll notice on the wall those bright yellow, I guess chartreuse sticky notes, giant sticky notes. I've taken the liberty of writing down already some of the things that our speakers said this morning. So if something comes to your mind, get together with a few people around you, grab the pen that's next to it, put concrete ideas up there. I'm going to add some of the things that the speakers have said now. If you guys could, for just a second, somebody had a really good question during the break. When people say things like, oh, those people, they just come here and they cause crime and they do this and they lead the system. I think, Ingrid, you just gave us two particular ones. They're more likely to be victims of crime than Turks. Anyone that came more than 100 years ago, there wasn't a legal immigration system, so you didn't come here legally. Any other rejoinders, that's the right word, Suzanne. Any other rejoinders you can think of that we should be prepared on how to respond when people make comments like that?
Yes, thank you. There's something else that a lot of people say is that they're coming here and they're taking our jobs. That is not true. You should say that they're coming here for better opportunities, that they are hard workers. Exactly, and help to educate the public about the things that are happening in those countries. Exactly, like feminicide in Honduras is absolutely gruesome. So just go, Feminicide. It's the killing of women just because they're women. And this is just close to me because I am Hispanic, but it happens in many countries of the world. And the gang violence in El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala. You should tell people that these people are not coming here because they want to, like it has already been said here. They don't have an option. I was blessed enough to come through the documented process, the system, but my life was not endangered. I had a client, I do not know how on earth he survived. I think it's the grace of God, that's all I can say. He had a cut from here to here because a gang member hit him with a machete, with an axe. And his little child, 3 years old, saw this. And that was the only way out. That was absolutely the only way out because it is extremely difficult to get a visa to come into this country. I had to wait a year. And I was one of the blessed ones because I spoke the language. I worked with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in my country. I was very blessed. And it took a whole year. So imagine what it is for other people if they are allowed. Because most of the time, they just get it denied.
I can add something to that. A lot of people think in this misconception that they are here to take everyone else's jobs, and that's not necessarily true. I will tell you that in a few of the states, maybe more than I would like to say, there have been programs in which the state has decided to implement a workers program for prisoners, in which the ones that are being close to being released are going to be released on a workers program. Prisoners have absolutely rejected this offer. And there have been millions of dollars that have been lost at this agricultural areas because they had no workers. And it's not that the immigrants are taking the jobs, it's that the jobs are there, and we as U.S. citizens don't want them.
I have one thing. There is a misunderstanding that just because they are here without documented status, that's the equivalent of being a criminal, right? Undocumented presence is not a crime. Okay, so somebody who came on a student visa, tourist visa, and overstayed, for example, has not committed any crime. Okay, okay, go ahead. Sorry. So, again, at the federal level, so USCCB would know much more than I, and Catholic Relief Services have been advocating to raise how much money goes for international aid for many, many years. It's less than 0.5% of our budget right now that goes to international programs like, Catholic programs like Catholic Relief Services that would not just stimulate the economy, but allow children to go to school, to be safe, to have breakfast programs, those things, to have a safer society. Because you know what, a lot of times, people that are joining gangs potentially are doing it to save their lives.
The immigration system is very complex, and no, there isn't a way. You have to be a qualifying relative of a U.S. citizen in order to apply. So, for example, a grandmother cannot sponsor a grandchild. The grandchild cannot sponsor a grandmother. An aunt cannot sponsor a niece or nephew. It's very, very limited, and as Elizabeth said earlier, it can take years. We have immediately experienced this with my parents' siblings. It took literally 14 years for my aunt to be able to come after the petition was approved. And once it's approved, the family needs to show that there is enough income for those family members to be able to come to the United States. So there isn't really a way. There is a way for adoption, but it's of minors. But for other adults, no. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yes. So when there is a person that is wanting to immigrate to the country, the person that is petitioning him or her has to file something that is called an affidavit of support. And they have to prove to the government that this immigrant is not going to become a public charge. Now, anybody that is a U.S. citizen or a legal permanent resident could potentially sign that affidavit of support, because the person that is petitioning, him or her, has the moral authority, has the moral responsibility of filing that, plus another one if they don't have enough income. Now, the problem is that when people are going abroad for their immigrant visas, there is this change that is going in process right now, and they are looking into why is a person that is not a family member of you signing this affidavit of support, and they are questioning these people while they are abroad.
Let me add to that. That is part of the last process. Before you even get to that process, you need to show that you have a qualifying U.S. citizen or a U.S. citizen, and that you are a qualifying person under the regulations to be able to benefit from that U.S. citizen status of your relatives. So not anybody can petition. Yes, other people who are not related can sign that affidavit of support as a joint sponsor, but if that petition hasn't been approved prior to that happening, there's no way.
On March 24th, starting at 10 a.m. from 10 to 10 p.m. Yes. One is dancing, there's music, there's games.
this in St. Thomas in Quincy. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it starts
Yes.
at 10 a.m. with soccer game, and then ends at 10 p.m. with a lot of music and I've been there. It's a lot of fun. A lot of
Me, guide me along the way. For if you lead me, I cannot stray. Lord, let me walk each day with thee. Lead me, O Lord, lead me. Take it from the Psalm 121. I raise my eyes toward the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. God will not allow your foot to sleep. Your guardian does not sleep. Truly, the guardian of Israel never slumbers nor sleeps. The Lord is your guardian. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. By day the sun cannot harm you, nor the moon by night. The Lord will guard you from all evil, will always guard your life. The Lord will guard your coming and your going, both now and forever. Glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit. The beginning is now and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. And may God bless you, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.